String inverters, microinverters, what's the difference? Who cares? By the end of this video, you'll know which inverter is the best choice for you. Is it safety, reliability, or power that you're chasing? I'm joined today by industry great Mark Kavanagh from MC Electrical, who is a die-hard Fronius fanboy. It's amazing that we can even sit in the same room together, Mark.
I know, mate.
Welcome.
Thanks, Jake. Thanks, Jake. This is going to be a fun one, right?
Yeah.
You won the Enphase award recently.
I
won
did.
the Fronius Advocate Award recently.
Yes.
I do 100% Fronius, you do 100% Enphase, and somehow we still get along.
Isn't it crazy? And I think, Mark, what is most important here, from my point of view, at some stage of our careers, we did opposite brands, right?
Yep.
You've installed a lot of Enphase, and I've installed thousands of string inverters, Fronius specifically. So this will be a great discussion, a great debate, and by the end of this, we might know a little more or a little less than when we started.
This will be great. We've done this so many times on the phone, but it's good to put it all package it together, right?
Yeah. Or after quite a few beers at a solar conference. So here we go. Mark, do you want to kick us off? What is your first point?
Yes, okay. So this is where I stopped installing Enphase, right? Because I always used Enphase as a shade solution. And you know what? I blame Enphase for this because their marketing says it. In fact, jump on ChatGPT and say, what works better in the shade, a Fronius inverter or Enphase? And it'll tell you Enphase works better. Do you know what? It's 100% wrong. I've done 2 videos. We're going to link to them below if we can, explaining that. And you know, that really annoyed me, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
You know, I'm supposed to be a rational guy. I'm not. I was really emotional in that stage. You know?
I believe it.
Like, it was actually Eddie May that put me onto it in the first place. And I did so much testing on it. And Fronius works better in some situations in the shade. Enphase works better in other situations in the shade. So which shade is which? I can't even pick that by looking at, at a roof.
Sure.
But it's much of a muchness, you know.
And I think, you're 100% right. We always thought, because of marketing, that Enphase was the #1 shading solution. Now, we're not saying it's not a shading solution.
It works.
But there are now other shading solutions also, you know.
I don't want to defend Enphase, but in Enphase's defense, so they're right when they say string inverters don't work well in the shade, because string inverters that don't have a global maximum power point tracker or have a global maximum power point tracker, but it doesn't work very well, Enphase works way better than that, right? But because Fronius have built in, SMA calls it shade fix, which is really good marketing, So basically an algorithm in there that works out where there's shade and what to do with the inverter setting. So the only 2 inverters that I've found that have got a decent one is SMA and Fronius, And
they've had them for quite some time, right?
They've had them
Since
for
the
long.
snap inverters started.
Yeah, well before that even, SMA was well before that,
Right. That's a really interesting point. That's the shade. And to be clear, there are still some string inverters out there that you shade one panel, that whole string is toast.
Oh yeah, nah. So what happens? And bucket loads of testing on this. It gets stuck. Okay, so you shade it, and it goes, whoops, go right down to from 3,000 watts down to 2,000 watts. Fronius goes, hang on, okay, now I'm going to control myself, and very quickly it'll bring itself up back to 2,900, and it'll only lose a little bit because of the shade. All these other inverters without that algorithm in them, without it tuned in properly, just go down to 2,000 and it goes, okay, I'm just going to stay on that. So it really affects the production of a string inverter. So there's some truth to it. It's just not true when you're speaking about SMA and Fronius, as it turns out.
I understand. Great point. Well, on to my point. Now, I also had this pivotal time in PSC's career. It was 2.5 to 3 years ago where I decided, and it was not brand specific, to be clear, my gripe was string and micro. Actually, it was DC versus AC. So, Mark, my big thing is AC is a safe technology. If you were to drill through an AC cable in a roof, the circuit breaker would trip, right? It has protection. It is safe. It's, touch wood, not going to start a fire, right? DC is a little different. Now, in the new AS5333, there's a new clause that says DC cable cannot be run across a roof space. It's got to be within 1.5 meters of the bird's mouth, the eave of the house when it comes into the roof. It's got to be, I think, 600 mil above. Now, the reason that rule's brought in for firefighters to hook a ceiling so they don't hook a DC cable. That's my gripe. That's my the number one reason why I went, whoa, this is crazy. I'm moving away from this. So with that DC comes obviously DC rooftop isolators. You've got MC4 plugs, which I'm so against man-made MC4 crimps on site. Even though we train it, I just think, they're a weak point. What do you think about that? How do you guys overcome that?
Yes, it's a really good point. And I think, honestly, it's Enphase's strongest point. And it still is, even though, Fronius have, in fact, just yesterday, I got a message from Rod at Fronius.
That's ironic.
I've been on them for about a year and a half about this because they brought out a technology called AFCI, arc fault circuit interruption.
Great.
So you have this issue that if you cut a cable or something like that, a possum chews a cable, it's not going to start arcing, which is a fair issue with string inverters, right? And so they have this technology in there that it picks up that it's arcing, picks up that signature in the curve. I've tested this on early models. It works fantastic on the Fronius. It doesn't work so well on cheaper inverters. They have AFCI built in, but it doesn't work.
Yeah.
I've been in my green room, burning the place down, with massive
smoke
arcs.
alarm going off.
Yeah, but the Fronius AFCI, which is just coming out around about now, or introduced into all of their inverters as we speak, sort of thing, that solves that issue. It's not as good as Enphase.
Okay.
But like one of my friends, Adrian from Fronius, he's no longer with Fronius, he explained to me, it's like, okay, you're driving a car, you've got airbags, you've got a seat belt, what are you going to put a bike helmet onto just in case? There's so far that you need to go with safety.
It's like a 1 in 100, like you're going down some serious cheese holes have got to line up to get to that point, right?
And I think, to be fair, Enphase is wearing a bike helmet as they're going. There's nothing that can go wrong with Enphase.
Fair, that's fair.
Okay, Jake, another objection I guess I have about Enphase is when we were installing it, it was costing a whole lot more than Fronius. And I'm thinking, well, it's not a shade solution. Theoretically, it could be safer, but I mean, you're talking about wearing a motorbike helmet when you're driving, a car. Why are you paying all that extra money? You've got an interesting response to that.
Mark, my question to you and to everyone at home, if they were the same price, what would you buy?
Yeah, that is a good one. And I've chewed over this, and I would still go Fronius. I've got some other objections that I'll put out.
Yeah.
I'll be fair, it would change the equation a fair bit. Like if it was exactly the same price for both systems, it would make it harder or it'd make it easier to switch to Enphase,
Yeah, and to answer that, Mark, we obviously, doing the volume that we do, get hugely rewarded by Enphase. Microinverters retail for $150 each. When we were doing mass volumes of string inverters, our advantage was never that great, so I had very little I could actually pass on to the client. Now, our gap in the market is actually so close that I truly believe if we're talking around a 15 kilowatt system and we're talking your price versus mine, by the time you add on a 3-phase energy meter, I would actually contest that we would not be that much different in price.
Yeah.
So for me, the pricing discussion back in the day, I remember it used to be, say, $3,000 to $4,000 more.
Yep.
I would be very surprised right now if there was $1,000 in it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So that would be interesting, and I guess that, like, you're doing massive volume, right?
Yes.
I've got some advantages with Fronius. I go 100% Fronius. Obviously, Fronius look after me, especially with stock and all that kind of thing, and a little bit on price. We get tighter pricing because we're buying volume.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you're right. Another thing that I reckon is part of the equation is we used to put 24 micros on the roof for a little 6.6 kilowatt system.
Yes,
right?
Yes, so, that's right. Yeah. See, now 24 panels gets us like 10.5 kilowatts, which ironically is about our average size right now. So as these panels have gotten bigger, and micros now 366 watts, the new IQ8 coming out is I think 384. So we can have a larger PV size, still keeping our ratio 33% or lower, and you're actually buying less micros and ultimately less supporting components as well, because every micro comes with trunking cable, comes with a relay potentially that you've got to put down at the board. So by using less of it, I think that gap has tightened, which I guess we could thank panels for.
Yeah, sure. Okay, I've got another one for you, and this is not a big one, to be fair.
Yeah.
Warranty. So with Fronius, it's 5 plus 5 year warranty, but because we're Solution Partners Plus,
Yes, you've got
we get the full 10-year warranty for our customers, which is great.
Yeah.
So that means everything is covered for the customer. They don't have to pay anything within that 10 years. Enphase, what's warranty on the micro?
10-year micro warranty, yeah.
10-year micro.
However, just on that, more than half our Enphase fleet out there at the moment are the SunPower P series, which actually come out with a full 25-year warranty, panel and micro. Crazy.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
One thing on that though is your Envoy, right?
Yes.
And to be fair, these long 25-year warranties or 10-year warranties are crazy anyway.
Yes, they are.
But the Envoy itself, which gives you all your monitoring to help let you see if your micro has failed or anything like that. If that fails, then you have to fork out a fair bit of money to get that replaced, right? And it's a 5-year warranty on that.
You're 100% right, Mark, and that is a downside of Enphase. The Envoy, we speak about it having no single point of failure. And the Envoy is not actually a single point of failure.
Yep.
It can fail and the system will still run unless the system is export limited, and then the system will turn off.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if the system's export limited and the Envoy does fail, it will actually shut down. So what we do to combat that is have this great in-house service department that proactively monitor our systems. But you are totally right. The Envoy does definitely need to step its game up. And by the way, the Envoy is about 6 or 7 years old. The only thing that's gotten better is software.
Yeah.
So that Envoy is certainly due for a refresh, and hopefully we get it soon.
Yeah. And to be fair, we haven't had that many failures. I went through our failure figures. We've done about 188 systems, I think, of Enphase.
Yep.
And we've apparently, from our count this morning, we've had at least 6 failures, right?
Okay.
So
of Envoy only.
of Envoys,
Yeah.
And that's not a huge deal, right? Outside of warranty, normally for them, the customer pays.
Yeah.
Not perfect, but
No,
that's
and
fine,
Mark, sometimes the Envoy is electronics. Lightning strikes are the number one thing that takes down Envoys in our experience.
Do you do surge diverters on your
Mate, we don't do, and the reason we don't do them is because the actual relay, the Enphase Q relay, it doesn't have surge diversion inbuilt, but it is a surge. It's a form of how do you say it? It's a sacrificial part, right?
Yep.
It's the thing. The Q relay is the sacrificial part in a lightning strike of that system.
Right.
So it will save the micros. The micros should never get cooked by lightning. It should always be the Q relay that goes, and everything else should be good to go.
Interesting.
So Raghu, I spoke with Raghu, the founder of Enphase, last week about this.
Guy.
Yeah, and it was not something that I'd thought about. He dialed down and really broke it apart for me. So it was interesting to find out.
Yeah, because we were doing surge diverters. I never knew that when we were doing Enphase.
Yeah,
but
we do them on commercial systems though, and the reason we do them on our commercial systems is because not all of our branches have Q relays. We actually set them up to only have one Q relay, and the rest is controlled by a GPU, grid protection unit. So that's a contactor that disconnects the grid if there's a frequency variance or a voltage spike. So by using that secondary form of protection, we actually don't need to use a whole heap of Q relays in a commercial site.
Sure. Yeah, okay. You should whack an image up of your Q board here.
Yes.
Your 100 kilowatt board. That is insane. You're showing it to me before.
Thank you.
I think Sparkies would love to see that.
Yeah, a lot of pride goes into them. So we worked closely with iBoards to build the perfect board, and this is what we've ended up with. We'll put a picture up now.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I've got another point.
Yep.
The 5033, the latest update, now says that for DC systems, if you don't use a rooftop isolator and you do a disconnection point, which I understand would probably be 90% of your jobs.
Yeah, 95 maybe.
Yeah, so you're not using that many DC rooftop isolators, which is a great move, by the way. You've now got to do a map in the manhole.
Yeah.
Now, also, have you noticed that when you get solar installed, and a really quick way to notice when solar's installed is they've got a little PV sticker on the front of their switchboard.
Yep.
Now, it'll either say DC or it'll say AC, or if it's battery, it'll say ES, and that's a separate sticker. Why do you think that the DC one is different to the AC? Who is that important to and why?
Yeah, I can see this point. So it's a good point. So with Enphase, if it's, what do you call it, AC, AC power, fiery doesn't worry. Flick the power off, flick the main switch off, or if the power's off on the house anyway, no worries, no power flowing, right?
Yeah.
You've got the 40 volts on the roof from the panel, which will do nothing. But especially with a poorly installed string system,
Absolutely.
You can have issues there. Like if your house is on fire, it's the middle of the day, the solar's working, that solar can go up to your DC cable and then burn the DC cable, and that's just going to be fuel to the fire, right?
Big time.
I mean, at this stage, your house is burning down anyway. But,
Fair point.
you know,
yeah.
but yeah, a PV, but yeah, exactly. DC is just inherently more dangerous. And this is why I was telling you about that arc fault circuit interruption, which is coming out on Fronius and works really well on Fronius.
Yep.
I think another couple of inverters have it.
What do you, arc fault, AF?
AFCI.
AFCI.
Fault.
Yeah, AFCI.
Arc fault circuit interruption.
Now, Enphase, specifically micro technology, there's one other brand that we won't mention that has it. Rapid shutdown, Mark.
Yep.
When you turn it off at the board, you don't need to
Let's
go
not
there.
mention them.
Let's not. You turn it off at the board, right, and it truly turns off at panel level.
Yes, yeah.
Do you think if this becomes compulsory in Australia, which it may or it may not, it's already compulsory in the US, will arc fault
Circuit interruption.
Circuit interruption cover that or no? Will there need to be additional measures?
Yeah. And you would have to get products on the market now. You'd have to get a Tygo. You'd have to get power electronics.
Yeah.
Put it on the roof.
Yeah.
And you know, that would be the tipping point for me. If that came in as regulation, which I don't think it should. I think it's a terrible regulation. Then I'd go 100% Enphase. Yeah.
Do you know, I think part of the reason, just on that topic as to why America has it, just for those playing at home, Americans can actually install their own solar at home. This is why Enphase is actually so popular in America, because of rapid shutdown, and it's plug and play.
Yep.
So homeowners can quite literally buy this stuff, build their system, and off they go. It's wild. I learnt this the other week.
Yeah.
Crazy. Imagine if that happened in Australia.
Yes. I don't want to imagine that.
No, I don't either.
I'm glad we've got strict regs here. So
yeah. Awesome, mate.
Okay, I want to talk to you about my next problem that I've got with it. 3 or 4 years ago, I was over in the States and I went and visited Enphase. And Raghu, that you mentioned before, one of the founders of Enphase, such a nice guy, right?
Yes.
He probably took about an hour. He didn't know me from bar of soap, right? Took about an hour of his day out, sat with me and a couple of my staff, and we just talked about Enphase and failures and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And the figure that he threw out to me was Enphase are aiming for 500 defective parts per million, which sounds awesome, right? That's a really low failure rate, but that's per year. So if you break that down and you do the maths backwards, that if you have a 20 panel system on your house, 20 microinverters, then you've got a 10% chance of one of your micros failing within 10 years.
Yes.
Now, if I said, that's only one micro to be fair, right?
Sure.
But if I said there's a 10% chance of Fronius failing in 10 years, no way.
Right.
But what that means for me is there's a truck roll every, 10% of my jobs. We actually did the figures this morning. I was surprised. Our failures had been really low. At the moment, we've done 188 systems, as I told you. We've had 16 micro fails and 6 envoys. So we've had nearly already 10% failures.
10% failure.
And we started our installs 8 years ago. And then until recently, about a year ago, we finished them.
Yep.
So when all of those systems get to their 10 years, I'm expecting 10% is very ambitious. We're going to have a lot more failures than 10% of our micros. So then this is my concern for the customer, right? Outside of that 10-year warranty, it's great if they've got a 25-year warranty on it, right? You guys are going to cover it. But outside of that 10-year warranty, then one starts popping, the next one starts popping, truck roll, you're paying for that bloke to get on the roof.
Yep.
Probably about the same time, I could go out and replace an inverter. It's going to cost you more, but that inverter's going to go for another 10 years, So,
good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, really good point. And I guess to answer that is, it does matter that a micro fails, right? And to be clear, in the US, this exact same product that we have has a 25-year warranty.
Yeah.
Now, Mark, I've got a question for you about your question. When you are looking at these failures, do you know what series of micro they are? Are they an S, or did you only ever do IQ?
I can't remember. So the message was there's 50-50 of, and I can't even remember what micros they are.
S series and then IQ, yeah. We've got one S series in our fleet. So the problem with S series micros, which are probably that earlier era you're talking, I think they were finished in 2017. They had moving parts in them, right? They actually had the relay on the roof, and they also had a communication problem. They definitely did. So when they're talking about that 500 in a million failure, that's an umbrella of their M series, S series, and IQ series.
Right.
I think if we dug into the IQ series, which is obviously what we currently install, I would be very surprised if the failure rate was that. And I say that out of experience, you know, what we actually experience with our warranty claims at the moment. Enphase also, a lot of manufacturers really try and avoid a great warranty process. You know, some of those string inverter manufacturers, and Fronius isn't one of them, but some of the ones that maybe don't have offices in Australia, like good luck getting a warranty claim.
Some of the ones that do have offices in Australia.
Good luck getting a warranty claim, right?
Yeah.
The thing, Mark, that I love and feel supported by with Enphase is the one-click warranty claim, right?
Yeah.
So you can do an RMA remotely. In fact, we can be so proactive with our warranty claims that we can actually already have the new microinverter in our hot little hands before the client even knows that a microinverter is down. We can actually go out and yes, it would take the same amount of time to replace a string and a micro. The thing is, unless you're a Fronius Partner Solutions Partner Plus, you can't go and do a one-stop warranty claim. It's not possible. You've got to go test, diagnose, then you've got to come back a couple of weeks later with a new inverter, or days if you're lucky, right? You replace it with a new inverter or an RMA inverter, then you're good to go. But in the meantime, the customers had no solar.
Yep.
So how many kilowatt hours did we lose? With Fronius, unless it's a huge mass failure of some sort, there's no single point of failure. So if my client's got 24 micros, and let's say that's 9.15 kilowatts worth of inverter capacity right now, if my maths is good, then you've still got 8.9 kilowatts of inverter capacity actively running. So yes, there will be warranty claims, and we all know warranty claims are a bathtub curve, right?
Yep.
You get a fair few at the start, hopefully low through the life, and then it's designed that you do get failures at the end of the warranty period.
Yep.
So we will see. And right now, while Enphase are paying us to go and do these things, and whilst Enphase are extremely profitable, I'd hope that it won't become a problem for us. But it's a good question, Mark. It's a really good question because warranties right now are a hot topic in solar, right? And I mean, what's the warranty worth if the company's not even going to be around when you get to that stage anyway?
And that's what I was going to say is if you're going to buy something that is going to everything's going to take a lot of warranty, right?
Yeah.
But for me, if you're going to buy Enphase, even all the more reason to make sure the company that you're going to buy it off is going to be in business like yourself, which, you know, we've talked about your business plans and the way that you're, you know, have really carefully thought through what you're doing here. Yeah. And so you want to go with a company like yourself. That is just going to be here. So in 8 years' time, it's, hey, Jake, looks like on my monitoring, one of my micros is down.
Yeah.
No worries, a truck roll, you know.
Or so, even better, if we're ringing you telling you a micro's down.
Yes, exactly.
That's the ultimate experience, and that's what we're pushing for.
Yeah.
Mate, that was a great question. I've got a question for you, if that's all right.
Excellent. Hit me hard.
So, Mark, you're an electrician.
Yep.
You're hyper intelligent. This is common knowledge. Moving parts equal heat. Heat equals fatigue. Fatigue equals failure.
Yep.
It's a really, really basic ass equation, right? There are so many moving parts in a string inverter.
Yep.
When we talk about reliability, and for me, the Enphase IQ series micros are so reliable, and their secret sauce is their Normal resin. A microinverter is filled. Once it's built, assembled, put together, the last step before it gets sealed is it gets injected with this gel type resin, a Normal resin, right? That dissipates heat and holds all components still. And there are 0 moving parts inside that micro. My concern with strings, and why I think they do actually fail a lot of the time, other than install quality, which is probably number one reason, the moving parts inside of them. Fronius, for so many years, there's been jokes about selling them with a pair of earmuffs. There's been jokes about there's a frog stuck in my inverter. Like these things can be noisy, Mark. Sometimes they're so noisy that you got to radio into control tower and tell them, hey, I'm not landing. It's just that my Simo 10 is screaming right now. Like, what's the go, man?
Yeah, no, and so it is a good point. Fronius is the only one that does a fan, by the way. And I test all the time and I'm comparing inverters. And so I put a thermometer in inverters all the time.
Yes.
And I have my new inverter, my new 300 piece of rubbish, or whatever it is, a decent inverter compared against the Fronius. Fronius always runs at least 10 degrees cooler than every other inverter. Quite often 15 or more cooler. And the reason for that is these fans, which can be a problem, like you point out, right? But for that point, 10 degrees cooler, the rule of thumb is for every 10 degrees cooler you run electronics, that you double the lifetime of the electronics, right? So it's massively important to cool it, right? But you're right. So that Snap inverter, Fronius's inverter that's been out for 7, 8 years or whatever it is. It had 1 or 2 fans on the side. They were little computer fans, like this. And if you had a 10 kilowatt inverter, you'd have 2 fans, and that'd be loud,
Actually, Mark, a 10 has 3. 1 in the middle, 2 on the side.
Yes, okay, fair enough. Good point.
Anything I think 8 or less had 2. I did install 2,000 of these, and I do still love Fronius as a company.
Yeah, sure. And those fans can fail. If you get a gecko down it, we don't have many failures at all with them.
Tell me you're from Queensland without telling me you're from Queensland.
Exactly.
If you get a toad stuck in there.
Cane toad in there or whatever it might be. Fans can fail. We don't have many failures of fans at all, right? And it's a simple replacement of that. And when I say many, not many, I think I can count them on one hand or 2 hands.
Sure.
And we've done 4,500, I think. The Fronius inverter. So it's not a big issue. Noise is an issue, right? And so you showed me a photo before of in someone's reception or something like that. You had 2 10 kilowatt inverters.
No, Eco 27s.
Oh,
they were Ecos, man.
Yeah. And so this thing would be screaming. You use common sense, You don't put it at the front door. You don't put it next to your barbecue. You don't put it in your living room.
Don't put it on the back of a bedroom if someone works shift work.
And exactly. And we've had the issue where the customer really wanted it in the garage, and we explained to them, this is noisy. We in fact invite customers into our showroom and say, we'll show you how noisy it is, and you decide whether that's too noisy for you.
Sure.
Anyway. So choose the right location. The second thing is the Gen 24 inverter, which is a massive step up from the Snap inverter. A lot of hype around
this Gen 24.
I could go on forever about it, but I won't. But it's got this big fan on the front that moves a lot slower, and so you can hear it when it's running at full pelt, especially on the bigger inverters. But it's nothing that anyone would get upset about. You probably still wouldn't have it, sitting in the reception or something like that.
No, you wouldn't do that.
But, so it is an issue, fair point, but I think a decent installer kind of gets around those issues.
And I've seen the new Gen 24 Mark, and it is well refined.
It's a beautiful inverter.
It is, for an electrician's point of view, like pulling the cover off this thing and feeling and playing with it, it's good. And Fronius, credit to Fronius, they have this thing called the 3 Ps, thanks to Seb, which I'm going to touch on in a second. But one of them is planet, right? And so Fronius has actually completely boxed this thing with recyclable materials that are made from recycled materials. So credit to them for that.
Yeah, the aluminium is 100%. Like someone worked out how many aluminium cans it is.
He told me. It's really, really cool. That's great. I've got one last point, Mark, and this annoys me.
Okay.
This annoys me a lot.
You're a bit emotional about this one too, are you? Yeah.
To say the least. Now, I know Fronius as a company, and I know they are good people. Fronius has something internally called the 3 Ps that are really important to them. Do you know what they are?
No, I don't.
Okay. Profit, people, and planet. They're like their 3 values.
Yes, of course I know that. Yeah.
Right? The 3 Ps.
Put me on the spot, mate.
No, I know, but you should know that if I do. So here's the thing about my absolute gripe. And look, they are leading the way in planet for sure. 24 hours of sun, recycled materials in their inverters, phenomenal effort, right? People, they love their people, their team's great. The profit thing annoys me a little bit. Here's my annoyance. Now, you've got to be...
How's profit a dirty word when you're a businessman? But anyway, go on.
Well, let me tell you why. The Gen 24, Mark, it comes in Gen 24 and Gen 24 Plus, is that right? Now, these are a hybrid inverter for those at home looking into inverters at the moment thinking, what's for me? A Gen 24 has the capability of having a DC battery attached to it, and that's why we call it a hybrid inverter. But to have it attached, you've got to have the Plus version. Now, the Plus version, the Gen 24 and the Gen 24 Plus are identical. It's a software update, is that right, to make it a Plus? So the hardware is already there. Now, Mark, for a 10 kilowatt Gen 24, how much does it cost to take it to a Gen 24 Plus?
About $800.
$800? Why?
I'm really surprised.
I'm annoyed at
Have
it
you ever-
because it costs nothing to do a software update. Every single inverter manufacturer does software updates overnight. My Tesla and yours, you get on them, they're a brand new car in the morning. If Elon can do that, Fronius, if one of their Ps is Planet, they can unlock that thing for free.
So many points in that. That really surprises me. You brought that up as a point.
Yes.
Okay, so we both drive Teslas, right? You got the pimped out version, so you can't don't have any upgrades. I got the long range Tesla, right? Mm-hmm. So Musk does the same thing. If I want that car to go 1 second or half a second faster, I fork out $3,000, and it can drive faster, right? I don't. Bill Gates, right? He made Microsoft Word, he could hand that out free to the whole world. But he's making profit out of it, dirty bugger. You know?
Yeah.
Like software is something that you need to pay for. And so they're making minimal profit, I would be thinking.
Yep.
The Gen 24 inverter is a really affordable inverter for what it is. But then they make their profit on all that R&D and all, you understand this, R&D and software, that takes money. So that's where they get their money back, is when, I don't know, 10% or 50% of the people open it up.
Yep. So. Well, it's a fair point. And you know what? If you didn't have the funds to do it up front, at least you can do it later.
Exactly,
right?
yeah.
So,
I think that's, and I have heard people say that, but I think that's one of the best features. You can get this for the same price as a Fronius Snap inverter, which was 7 years ago. Basically the same price, you can get a Gen 24 inverter.
Yep.
With all that extra technology in it, with PV Point, which I haven't even talked about yet, all these other features.
Yeah.
And then you pay to upgrade it. And in a digital age, I didn't think that was so offensive. So.
I find it offensive, but that's just me being probably a snag.
But then again, I'm still upset about Enphase and the shade,
Oh man! All right, guys, let's wrap this thing up.
Let's do it.
The battle of the greats. Now, Fronius is an incredible inverter manufacturer.
And Enphase, great people and a great product as well.
Yeah. So who wins? What are we choosing?
Mate, it's each, pick the installer, I think. It's not always about the product. In fact, it's not about the product really at all. Get a good product. Both of them are great products. Pick an installer that's going to be there to service it.
I totally agree, mate. And the hot tip, ring the installer, speak to their service department.
Exactly.
Who's going to be the one unlocking the Gen 24 Plus?
Exactly, yes.
Guys, thanks so much for joining us. I hope we've covered some great topics and you're more informed after watching this. Give us a like, share and subscribe, as Mark would say. And happy generating. We'll speak to you on the next one. Uru.